Hi, this is Joe with C&J Goods, and this time we're going to be building the Rabbit of Caerbannog, aka the Killer Bunny from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. This is about keychain size, it's not very large. This is my little prototype. I'm using vegtan today, which I don't normally do, which is why I have paints out, and I also have some optional tools I'll be using later. But as usual, I have scissors, I have my hole punch, my X-Acto knife. The leather that you need is really not all that big. If you can fit it underneath this grid, you're good to go. And I've got two types of thread, one black for the nose, and then I have another that's white, and this is actually a regular sewing thread. This is a quilting thread. And then I have acrylic paints. These are Angelus leather paints. They're really good because they flex instead of crack when you bend them. And I'm going to be using white and red to do all the painting, and then at the end I'll also be sealing it with an acrylic finisher. Again, also Angelus leather brand. I do also have Liquitex, which works with this leather because this is their flexible version. And yeah, let's see. I've got the brushes to work with it, a palette water reservoir for doing the burnishing and for mixing paints, and then I have my my leather needles. Okay, I think that's it for what I've got in the way of tools. Alright, let's clear the deck. As always, I include in the one sheet pattern, or any of my patterns, a 2-inch verify square to make sure that all your printer settings are correct. This time I'm using a small little engineer's ruler, and as I know, my settings right there are good to go. 2x2, everything's golden. And then I've got my pattern pieces. Let's get cutting out. A quick note while working with patterns, some people like to take a piece of thin masking tape, use that, and stick a pattern piece directly on the leather. That's not my preferred method of doing it because then there's a little bit of tape residue on there. I'd rather have to paint out the Sharpie on the reverse of the leather than deal with residue on the face and cleaning it properly. So we're gonna skip that stage and keep cutting out all these pattern pieces. Quick note before I get into marking all my holes, this is a symmetrical pattern, which means I don't really need to have both of these. I could have just one of each ear and one of each of the sides, and then just flip the pattern over when I trace it because there's hole markings on one side rather than the other. And I just figured if somebody wants to tape the pattern down, they can absolutely do it that way, and then they'd be able to fit all our pieces in and know how much leather they were going to use. So I'm just, for the sake of this video, I'm going to do a cheat way. I'm not even going to bother marking these, and I'm just going to use these two because I know this is a symmetrical pattern. Okay, quick note on this piece in particular. I've marked a hole here. You don't have to punch it, but I have found that when you're folding leather over to make a tight turn, it's much easier if you have that hole there because the dimensionality of leather. So it'll actually make making this little earpiece a lot easier if you go ahead and punch that hole and run the slice all the way back. Okay, here we go with the leather. I've got the rough side versus the smooth side that I'm going to trace onto because I want the smooth side to be face out on my bunny. I could do the rough side for the texture of it, but we're just going to go smooth today. Forgot to mention that this is a 2 to 3 ounce veg tan, so it's pretty thin. It's stiff like most veg tans, and we're going to be getting a couple pieces wet for a little bit of wet molding, but not too bad because mostly we're going to be painting this. I guess I'm not using both of the pieces for the pattern. If I'm trying to keep track of a project, I'll see which side has the Sharpie ink on it versus the other side. So if you're not sure what you've done, always look for the Sharpie ink. always make sure you check where you are on your leather. If there's any marks or scratches, make sure to mark on the reverse side if that's where you're going to put your Sharpie marks. Next step is to do a little bit of burnishing. I'm going to clean up some of these edges. You do not have to do this. It looks pretty cool even with rough edges. This is my prototype. You can see I didn't do my knots very tight just because I wanted to see how pieces went together and pull it apart and investigate it. So yeah, none of these edges are finished in any way, shape, or form. And I'm going to do a little bit more cleanup on this version. So I'm going to grab my beveling tool and do a bit of that. So one place I wanted to bevel is this is the top edge here. So I'm going to take the beveler and run it there so that this transition's a little bit more smooth and less pronounced. I'm not going to bother beveling the bottom edge here. I could go crazy and do the teeth and give them a little bit of texture, but instead I'm going to play with the ears a little bit. I want this edge to be a little bit softer. Now, if you want to get really fancy, you can take a skiving tool of whatever sort you happen to have and take down this part in here. So when you go to turn this, the profile is flatter against the head. I'm going to do that after I punch the holes in the ear because I don't want to lose my Sharpie marks. So this piece here is going to go on the inside and sit over this one. It's a bit stiff and hard to do that right now. We can do a little wet molding if you want to try to get that to form, or skiving it will thin things out a little bit and make it easier to bend. This is absolutely optional. You do not feel compelled to do this if you're not comfortable with skiving or if you don't have the tools. Next step, a little bit more hole punching. So I'm just gonna have a nice beady as. So next I'm gonna do a little bit of burnishing. With the vegtan, easiest way for me to do that is with a little bit of water. I also have a burnishing tool if I feel like getting super fancy. And then I also have a little bit of sandpaper. I'm mostly going to stick to finger burnishing and maybe a little bit of the tool. It's not a very thick veg tan, so you don't want to overwork it too much. So if you're not sure why I'm burnishing, because you haven't worked with veg tan. This is a veg tan is vegetable treated leather. That means you can paint it and dye it and wet mold it into shapes. You can even turn it into armor if you wanted. Maybe not something this thin, but that is classically how some armors were made. I'm basically taking this very fuzzy rough edge and I'm cleaning up so it's a little bit smoother and looks less hairy, for lack of a better word. Okay, I've waited a little while now so that the water that I used on the edges here would evaporate a little bit. It's probably been, I don't know, an hour or so. I also put a very bright halogen on it to speed up that process. You can't do too much or the leather will potato chip, so it's not like you can throw it in the oven to get it to evaporate fast or anything. I'm gonna start painting. Decided I want to leave the teeth just a little bit with the tan showing through, so I'm watering down a touch of the white just to get like a wash over them. I'm going to paint the reverse side of the ears, the inside, a little bit of pink. I'm going to mix some paint. So this is the smooth side. Everything's painted white. I've left a little bit of the tan showing through the teeth, and I've used the brushes, bristles, to give me a little bit of that texture. In the reverse of these guys, you can see I've given a little bit of color too. It's just going to be on the inside. It's just for me to play with a little bit. I like to use it to seal the leather a little bit too, because the acrylic itself acts a little bit like a seal. But I will be hitting these with the finisher after I've splattered some blood on it. I wanted the blood to be kind of consistent across the seams, because I'm going to splash it around the teeth and get it up on the little fuzzy mouth there. See? Okay, first thing I'm going to do is put the nose on here. I'm just going to run the thread through the eye twice so it stays put. I'm going to come up through this hole here, grab the tail so it doesn't go anywhere, and then go through the center hole. Then around the front, wrapping around the mouth, down through the center hole again, pulling tight, up through here, the last lonely hole, and back through the center hole again. So you have a Y shape happening for the nose. Isn't it cute? And this is a mammy material, so I'm going to burn my knot a little bit so it binds, and I'm going to clip the ends. There we go. And that's going to be on the inside. We're going to see it. My little bunny has its ears pointed back. And that's what we're prepping here. So 2 of these holes. These 2 are the ones we're using, and these 2. Leave this one for later. This is going to go on the inside. And since I know that this is going to get stitched down here, I'm going to hold the tail on the outside. And tie my knot on the outside because it's going to get hidden underneath. This is more just to make your life easier later on. You don't have to do this like this. You can just sew everything together in one shot. That's what I did here. I just find it a lot easier to find all these holes if I pre-bind the ears. I looked again in my stash and I found this, which is a much heavier thread than the quilting thread that I picked up. So I'm going to use this, and it's waxed already, which is great. It is natural fiber, so it's going to be a little bit harder to make the knots stick. So I'm going to be a little bit careful with that when I'm done. And the first thing we're going to do is attach this, this, and this. And get the teeth on there. I'm going to go a little bit more like 4 lengths on this, because it's going through so many layers. Pretty secure there. Now, instead of going back through here, I have that little hole that we haven't used for anything else in the front of the ear, and that's going to go into the next stitch hole here. I'm going to work from the bottom first. Let's hold this together. Outside into the face piece and down into the side and pull tight. So I've just about hit the last hole here on the face, and I'm about to hit the ones on the side. This is when I'm going to add in my teeth. And I'm going to go from the bottom just so I can track things more readily. So it's going to go into this first hole on this side. through the side piece and into the face piece. Oops. And let's not get that knotted up, which is easy enough to do. And for good measure, I'm going to go back through all those holes again. Doesn't hurt to have the extra security. The holes I punched are large enough to take this much needlework and this much thread. Again, I've hit that fourth hole, grabbing my ear. And going through. Once that dries, I'm going to hit this with an acrylic finisher. This gives it a top coat so that everything is sealed that little bit more from the vegtan taking any water on and reshaping and distorting and getting water stains. But there you have it. There's the killer bunny. You can put a keychain through both his ears. You line them up, punch a hole, and get a ring on there, or you can put on the back of his head, whatever makes you feel more comfortable.